Hello and welcome back to Z Sci-Fi Stories. Before we dive into today's journey, we want to share that YouTube has recently demonetized our channel, leaving us without the budget to keep operating. If you enjoy our stories, please consider supporting us with just $1 so we can pay our hardworking staff to sustain their lives and continue creating these adventures for you. You can support us by scanning the QR code on your screen, or by clicking the donation link in the description or the pinned comment below. Enrique Bunnell breathed in the stale and metallic air of his atmospheric suit, a thin barrier between his fragile human lungs and a hostile void. He was an independent space acoustic engineer, currently trekking across the rusted crust of a dead world. This ruined planet had been entirely discarded by the Empire thousands of years ago, reduced to a forgotten graveyard of jagged metal, decaying machinery, and corrosive ash. The silence out here was absolute, a heavy and suffocating blanket of nothingness that pressed violently against his eardrums. He was merely sweeping for junk signals, wandering the desolate wastes in hopes of salvaging scraps of forgotten audio data to sell on the black market. Every cautious step he took crunched loudly against the decaying remains of colossal structures that had long surrendered to the relentless rust of time. Without warning, the ground beneath his boots groaned with a sickening metallic shriek. It was not a natural seismic shift. The vibration felt synthetic and highly rhythmic, like a massive planetary engine turning over deep within the mantle. The rusted surface suddenly fractured, and the crust simply gave way, swallowing him whole. Enrique plummeted into the absolute abyss. He tumbled blindly through the pitch-black darkness, striking his shoulders, knees, and ribs against jagged outcrops of subterranean stone and ancient steel. He finally crashed onto a cold, unforgiving floor, the impact knocking the wind completely out of his lungs and sending a blinding shockwave of pain up his spine. As his helmet lights flickered back to life, casting harsh beams through the stirred dust, they illuminated a subterranean vault of unimaginable scale. At the very center of this massive underground cavern stood a monolithic black crystal, perfectly smooth and eerily devoid of any age or decay. But his brief moment of awe quickly gave way to pure, primal terror. A piercing hiss erupted from his back. The critical red warning lights blinked furiously across the display inside his visor. His primary oxygen system had suffered a severe leak, and his precious life support was venting rapidly into the toxic, unbreathable atmosphere of the cave. He scrambled desperately to his feet, clutching his bruised side, his lungs already burning as he choked on his own panicked and shallow breaths. Desperation consumed him. He stumbled blindly toward the massive crystal, dragging his heavy boots across the smooth obsidian floor, frantically searching for any sort of emergency shelter. A maintenance terminal or an escape shaft. At the core of the black monolith, suspended in a localized anti-gravity field, hovered a sword. It was not forged from iron, steel, or any known imperial material. It was composed entirely of a dark, shifting liquid alloy. The strange substance flowed and rippled like thick mercury, constantly rearranging its own complex molecular structure in a hypnotic dance. Strangely, the blade radiated zero thermal energy. Instead of heat, the weapon emitted a sound. It was a low, thrumming acoustic frequency that entirely bypassed Enrique's ears, vibrating directly and violently inside his chest cavity. The unnatural frequency perfectly matched his own erratic heartbeat. The resonance was completely magnetic. It pulled relentlessly at his mind, entirely drowning out the blaring proximity alarms of his dying oxygen tank. The sound whispered through his veins, compelling his aching muscles to move forward against his own will. He could not resist the call. His vision blurred severely, darkening to pitch black at the edges as asphyxiation crept closer. Yet his right hand reached out unsteadily toward the hilt of the liquid blade. The exact moment his gloved fingers wrapped around the hilt, the liquid alloy surged to terrifying life. It did not just stay contained within his hand. The metallic fluid slithered rapidly up his arm, like a living, mechanical serpent, burning completely through his heavy protective suit in a fraction of a second. The dark liquid burrowed directly into his exposed flesh. Enrique threw his head back and screamed, but no sound escaped his paralyzed throat. The pain was absolute, a searing, mind-tearing agony as the invasive alloy spliced complex electronic genetic codes directly into his central nervous system. Simultaneously, the living metal violently stitched the rupture in his life support gear. A sudden, forceful rush of cold artificial oxygen flooded his burning lungs, keeping him conscious through the torture. He collapsed hard to his knees, gasping and violently shivering, his veins glowing with a faint, unnatural blue light beneath his pale skin as the foreign data forcefully integrated with his human biology. The agonizing rewrite of his mind forced a terrifying truth into his fragile consciousness. This object was never a weapon meant for battle. It was a biological key. And as the dark crystal behind him began to fracture with a deafening crack, Enrique realized with absolute horror that he had just forced open a door that the universe had strictly sealed shut millennia ago. The ground above Enrique did not merely break. It disintegrated on a planetary scale. The immense, subterranean vault that had trapped him suddenly thrust violently upward, propelled by a cataclysmic force that defied all known physics and mocked the structural integrity of the globe. Across the dead world, deep fault lines ruptured, tearing the rusted crust into jagged trenches hundreds of miles deep and thousands of miles long. The deafening roar of entire continents colliding and shattering echoed into the upper exosphere, throwing millions of tons of debris into the dead sky. From beneath the crumbling rock and corrosive ash, a colossal expanse of biometallic shell heaved upward, shedding the planet's mantle like a snake shedding dead skin. It was not a mere machine. It was a living, breathing architecture of impossible proportions, its dark, iridescent surface pulsing with raging rivers of neon blue energy. The tectonic plates of the dead planet were casually tossed aside, melting into slag as the buried behemoth finally stirred from its millennial slumber. Bursting forth from the boiling magma of the planetary core, a titan of unfathomable magnitude ascended. Its terrifying shape mirrored that of a biomechanical manta ray, but its wingspan was roughly the exact size of a major continent. The gargantuan entity violently displaced the atmosphere as it rose, creating localized hurricanes and hyperstorms merely by lifting its massive, sweeping fins. Torrents of liquid metal dripped from its glowing underbelly, raining down like molten meteorites upon the shattered landscape below, vaporizing whatever remained of the ancient ruins. The Titan hovered effortlessly in the thin upper atmosphere, completely defying the violent gravity of the dying world. Its vast, sweeping wings blotted out the distant sun, plunging the ruined hemisphere into an eclipsing, suffocating darkness that was lit only by the terrifying, pulsing veins of ancient energy racing across its impenetrable metallic hide. The cosmic disturbance was instantly detected across the galaxy. Space itself folded inward, tearing open a massive, blinding rift in the cold vacuum directly above the planet. The Royal Patrol fleet of the Empire dropped out of their spatial jump in perfect, lethal formation, their arrival heralded by the shrieking distortion of gravity drives. Hundreds of heavily armored dreadnoughts and planetary siege cruisers eclipsed the remaining starlight. Their advanced weapon systems instantly glowed, with enough concentrated thermal destruction to vaporize the entire rocky sphere in a matter of seconds. Leading the formidable armada was Commander Kalen, a highly decorated enforcer of the Empire, whose ruthless efficiency was deeply feared across dozens of star systems. Standing on the grand command deck of her flagship, she stared coldly at the planetary anomaly through the primary tactical screen. She immediately authorized the rapid deployment sequence, leading an elite orbital strike team down through the collapsing atmosphere in heavily armored drop pods to eradicate the biological threat at its source before the giant entity could fully mobilize its weapons. Kaelin touched down in the devastated, smoking ruins of the subterranean vault, her heavy combat boots crushing the glowing remnants of the shattered black crystal. Her heavy plasma rifle was primed and aimed, ready to instantly incinerate whatever heresy had triggered the violent awakening. Her elite Imperial guards fanned out flawlessly behind her, their targeting lasers tracking every shifting shadow in the dust. But as the swirling ash finally settled, Kaelin completely froze. Her advanced tactical visor locked onto a sight that utterly shattered her reality and defied every law she had sworn to uphold. There, kneeling helplessly in the center of the massive crater, was a fragile, trembling human being. It was just a lowly, pathetic space scavenger, gasping painfully for breath inside a broken atmospheric suit. Yet his right hand was firmly and impossibly gripping the hilt of the forbidden blade. The heavy plasma rifle slipped from her armored hands and crashed loudly onto the fractured stone floor. Her elite guards stood totally paralyzed, their rigid, lifelong military discipline evaporating into pure, unadulterated horror. According to the absolute and sacred doctrines of the powerful empire, humanity was a primitive, lower-tier species, utterly insignificant and entirely incompatible with the sacred ancient technology of the gods. The holy texts strictly dictated that any lesser being who dared to even brush their filthy skin against the divine weapons would be instantly and painfully reduced to microscopic dust. Yet, this totally insignificant man was not burning. He was not dying. He was absorbing the sacred liquid alloy, perfectly merging with the ancient relic as it rewrote his very biology. "This is completely impossible. He should be nothing but ashes," Kaelin whispered, her voice trembling violently as the absolute, unquestionable foundation of her religious beliefs crumbled into nothingness before her very eyes. Before Kaelin or her terrified guards could recover their shattered senses and engage the target, the atmosphere directly above them violently compressed. The continental-sized manta ray titan let out a deafening, harmonic roar that completely shattered the sound barrier and reverberated intensely through the cold vacuum of space itself. The physical shockwave of the mighty cry knocked the heavily armored Imperial guards completely off their feet and instantly scrambled the advanced targeting arrays of the entire massive armada orbiting above. Slowly, and with terrifying majesty, the colossal entity lowered its massive form toward the ruined, burning crust. Instead of unleashing its apocalyptic, world-ending wrath upon the puny, fragile human who dared to hold its ancient tether, the mighty titan enveloped Enrique in a blinding, impenetrable sphere of pure blue energy. It was an absolute protective force field, shielding the frail acoustic engineer from the wrath of the Empire, the toxic elements, and the chaotic destruction of the shattering world. The ancient god had finally awakened, and to the absolute terror of the Empire, it had chosen to bow to a human. Enrique Bunnell no longer saw the physical world, the rusted ruins, the swirling ash, and the heavily armored Imperial soldiers entirely dissolved into a chaotic, terrifying spectrum of raw data. The liquid alloy pulsing through his human veins was acting as a flawless biological hyperconductor, forcefully downloading millions of years of alien memories directly into his fragile cerebral cortex. His mind, built to endure perhaps 8 or 9 decades of simple human existence, was violently overloaded. The agonizing pain made his vision white out. Instead of solid objects, he began to perceive the exact molecular structures of everything around him. He saw the very air he breathed vibrating as distinct acoustic frequencies. He could hear the dying whispers of long extinct civilizations and see the chaotic birth of entire galaxies flashing behind his tightly shut eyelids. He was drowning in a digital ocean of infinite depth, entirely paralyzed by the crushing weight of cosmic history. High above the shattered atmosphere, the Imperial fleet made its judgment without a single fraction of a second of hesitation. The High Command orbital stations detected the impossible energy spike and instantly abandoned their most sacred religious protocols. There was no attempt to secure the holy site. A devastating barrage of orbital siege cannons locked directly onto Enrique. Kalen looked up through the violently swirling dust and watched the dead sky ignite into a blinding, apocalyptic shade of crimson. Hundreds of concentrated plasma beams, each one wide enough to completely swallow a massive sprawling city, rained down from the heavens. The tactical dreadnoughts were firing at their maximum destructive yield. The cold, undeniable truth crashed over Kalen. The Empire was perfectly willing to incinerate her and her entire elite vanguard just to guarantee that this single biological anomaly was wiped from existence. But the apocalyptic impact never struck the ground. The colossal, continent-sized biomechanical beast hovering above them reacted. It did not deploy heavy physical shields or kinetic barriers. Instead, the gigantic manta ray entity vibrated its massive metallic wings and released a localized, inverse acoustic frequency. The invisible sound wave rippled downward, colliding directly with the falling barrage of orbital plasma. The devastating thermal energy was instantly and completely neutralized. The deadly wavelengths of the crimson fire were perfectly inverted by the song of the Titan. The apocalyptic beams of pure destruction shattered in midair, dissolving into a gentle, shimmering rain of harmless white photons that fell softly upon the ruined crust like glowing snow. Kalen stood absolutely still amidst the falling light, her breath catching painfully in her throat. The ashes of her fanatical devotion scattered into the wind. The absolute truth struck her with a crushing psychological weight. The Empire did not worship these ancient creators. They were deeply, fundamentally terrified of them. The grand cathedrals, the holy texts, and the rigid dogmas were nothing but carefully constructed propaganda designed to hide a universal, desperate cowardice. Her superiors ordered the strike because they knew that whatever power this human had awakened could completely end their tyrannical reign in a single heartbeat. Her entire life of unwavering loyalty evaporated in that exact moment, replaced by a cold, burning clarity. "Get up on your feet," Kalen commanded, violently hauling the convulsing acoustic engineer upward by the shoulder plates of his ruined suit. She ripped the prestigious Imperial insignia from her chest armor and tossed it into the dirt. Using her heavily encrypted command gauntlet, she rapidly bypassed her military firewalls and synchronized her access codes with the glowing biometallic hull of the beast looming above them. She manually punched in a Level 9 override sequence, tearing open a swirling, temporary spatial tunnel that led directly into the underbelly of the colossal entity. "We have to move right now." She dragged Enrique through the shimmering tear in space, diving into the dark unknown just as a second, far more massive wave of orbital fire scorched the exact spot where they had been standing. Inside the belly of the Titan, the architecture was a dizzying, surreal maze of pulsing energy veins and shifting metallic muscle. As Kalen pulled him relentlessly down a massive, glowing corridor, Enrique felt his own human identity aggressively slipping away. The Forbidden Blade was not just a key, it was an actively rewriting his neural pathways, alien battle tactics, the exact coordinates of 10,000 dead worlds, and the complex languages of forgotten celestial species flooded his consciousness, ruthlessly drowning out his own past. He squeezed his eyes shut, violently fighting the digital tide. He forced himself to remember the smell of fresh rain on Earth. He repeated his mother's name over and over in his head. He clung desperately to the fading memory of a cheap acoustic guitar he used to play in his cramped apartment on Mars. He had to fight with every ounce of his willpower to hold on to those fragile, insignificant human memories. if he let go for even 1 second. Enrique Bonell would completely cease to exist, and only the cold, ancient ghost of the blade would remain. The central chamber of the colossal entity was not the cold, steel bridge of a traditional warship. It was a vast, cathedral-like expanse of glowing bioluminescence and breathtaking organic architecture. Emerald and sapphire rivers of pure, liquid energy pulsed rhythmically through translucent, synthetic veins, converging upon a massive, beating heart made of woven light. Enrique Bonell and Commander Kalin stood on a suspended platform of smooth organic glass, entirely dwarfed by the sheer, incomprehensible scale of the engineering marvel. Enrique, still reeling from the violent physical and mental data integration, ran his glowing, liquid metal-coated hand over a floating, geometric terminal interface. As his trembling fingers made contact, a massive three-dimensional holographic map of the entire galaxy erupted into the chamber, filling the empty air with millions of sparkling, interconnected star systems. "This is not a command center for a weapon," Enrique gasped, his chest heaving as his vocal cords strained to adapt to the overwhelming flood of alien data. "Listen to the frequency. I can hear the architecture of this place. There are no targeting arrays. There are no ammunition reserves or kinetic shielding generators. This entire structure is a planetary tectonic core. It is an incubator, a massive flying seed designed to terraform dead rocks and breathe atmospheric life into barren, uninhabitable worlds." Kalin stepped cautiously forward, her sharp eyes scanning the floating geometric data streams. Her highly trained tactical mind effortlessly translated the ancient schematics. The undeniable truth hit her with the physical force of a kinetic orbital strike. "The Empire lied about absolutely everything," she said, her voice dropping to a harsh, disbelieving whisper. "The Grand Archives teach that our founders built the hyperlanes, that the first emperors forged the stars themselves and tamed the wild cosmos. But they did not build a single thing. They stole it all." The holographic projection shifted abruptly, revealing a horrifying historical record that had been meticulously hidden for over 10,000 years. The Titans were not mythical beasts or forgotten, dangerous relics. They were the original, primeval creators, the benevolent architects who actively cultivated the cosmos and spread organic life across the galaxy. The ancestors of the current imperial rulers were merely opportunistic, violent scavengers. They had devised a treacherous technological parasite, a highly advanced method to completely hijack the complex nervous systems of these peaceful giants. The Empire had spent thousands of years physically imprisoning the mighty Titans deep within the pressurized cores of countless planets, parasitically siphoning their infinite, renewable thermal and biological energy to indefinitely power their massive military armadas and opulent capital cities. Enrique looked down at his right arm in absolute disgust. The dark, liquid alloy of the blade was securely and permanently fused to his flesh, humming with a dark, oppressive static that made his teeth ache. "And this," he murmured, lifting his heavy hand toward the glowing console. "This is not a royal scepter or a holy relic of divine leadership. The data flowing into my brain is clear now. It is a biological control interface, a master-slave collar. The Empire used these liquid blades to inject continuous, agonizing electrical torture directly into the central nervous systems of the creators. That is exactly how they forced them into a deep sleep. That is how they kept the gods chained in the dark for millennia." Kalin turned to face him, her expression hardening as the final pieces of the grand galactic puzzle locked firmly into place. "That perfectly explains why the entire High Command is frantically trying to vaporize you. Enrique, the Imperial scholars always furiously debated why the ancient weapons were totally locked out, why touching them instantly turned our greatest military leaders to ash. The locking mechanism requires a highly specific biological frequency to override the base security protocols. The Imperial genetic code is far too rigid, mathematically perfected by hundreds of years of careful, selective breeding. But humanity is entirely different. Enrique finished the grim thought, his breath hitching as the immense gravity of the situation settled heavily upon his exhausted shoulders. Our neural pathways are inherently unpredictable. We are flawed, chaotic, and completely irregular. We are the only living species in the entire galaxy with a brain structure erratic enough to accidentally bypass the complex geometric lock code of the master caller. Suddenly, the serene, glowing chamber violently lurched sideways. A deafening mechanical groan echoed through the thick, biological walls of the Titan. Blaring red warning runes aggressively flashed across the holographic display, instantly drowning out the peaceful emerald light. Kaylin frantically pulled up a tactical sensor feed from her encrypted gauntlet, her eyes widening in absolute, paralyzing horror. "The High Command has completely lost their minds," Kaylin shouted, bracing herself hard against the organic console as another massive, structural tremor violently shook the core room. "They are not just firing standard orbital lasers anymore. They have officially authorized the deployment of the stellar annihilation weapon. They are detonating a singularity warhead right outside the planet's upper atmosphere." Enrique watched the tactical feed in sheer disbelief. A massive, unnatural tear in the very fabric of space was violently spiraling open just beyond the shattered crust of the dead world. It was a synthetic black hole, a localized gravity well of infinite density that was rapidly expanding to swallow the entire planetary system. The ruling council of the Empire was perfectly willing to erase dozens of nearby moons, the ruined planet, and their own massive vanguard fleet, just to ensure the dark secret of the Titans remained buried forever. The terrifying, inescapable gravitational pull was already beginning to severely warp the outer hull of the Creator, dragging the continent-sized entity upward toward the crushing, inescapable event horizon. Simultaneously, a searing, blinding spike of pure agony shot straight up Enrique's arm and deep into his skull. The ancient artificial intelligence embedded within the liquid sword recognized the terminal, existential threat. It aggressively bypassed his human restraint, forcing a terrifying, calculated ultimatum directly into his cerebral cortex. The living weapon showed him exactly how to survive the cosmic execution. All he had to do was tightly clench his fist and transmit a single, ultimate command signal through the galactic network. The sword violently pushed him to use his chaotic human authority to forcefully awaken the tens of thousands of other Titans, currently chained deep beneath the surfaces of the most heavily populated planets in the galaxy. The mathematical calculation presented by the blade was mercilessly simple and perfectly logical. If he sent the awakening signal, the enslaved creators would instantly tear their way out of their planetary prisons. They would violently shatter the crusts of over 1,000 planets, instantly vaporizing the Imperial fleets and completely collapsing the corrupt galactic government in a matter of hours. The Empire would be utterly and violently eradicated, and Enrique would easily survive the black hole by commanding the liberated gods to rip open a massive, coordinated spatial rift to carry him to safety. But Enrique vividly saw the true, horrific cost of that survival. Waking the sleeping Titans meant the immediate, unavoidable geological destruction of those densely populated worlds. He would be directly condemning billions upon billions of innocent civilians, countless civilian families, and oblivious citizens who knew absolutely nothing about the ancient, horrific crimes committed by their ruthless rulers. The liquid blade tightened its metallic grip around his radius bone, pulsing with a dark, commanding rhythm, fiercely pressuring the insignificant acoustic engineer to become the new executioner of the galaxy, simply to save his own life. The suffocating, unimaginable weight of billions of souls pressed down heavily on his fractured mind, leaving him completely paralyzed and gasping for air in the face of an impossible, apocalyptic moral crossroad. The artificial singularity ripped the fabric of space apart with a sound like tearing silk, amplified a billion times. The absolute darkness of the localized black hole devoured all surrounding starlight, creating a terrifying, inescapable gravity well that immediately began to warp the physical reality of the devastated star system. The colossal biomechanical manta ray Titan, easily the size of a continent, was dragged upward with merciless, agonizing force. The overwhelming gravitational pull violently bent the invincible metallic plates of its outer shell, forcing a deafening, horrifying scream from the deepest vocal chambers of the ancient beast. It was not the sound of failing machinery. It was the raw, unadulterated cry of a living god experiencing profound physical torture. The sheer acoustic force of the Titan's pain shattered the organic glass platforms inside the central core chamber, sending thick shards of glowing light raining down upon the deck like broken diamonds. Enrique Buñuel fell hard to his knees, utterly paralyzed by the sheer magnitude of the destruction. The crushing physical pressure of the singularity outside was absolutely nothing compared to the apocalyptic weight expanding inside his own mind. The dark liquid alloy of the forbidden blade had completely merged with his right arm, violently forcing his human consciousness to witness the cold, mathematical certainty of their impending doom. Commander Kalin could clearly see the human engineer breaking under the immense cosmic strain. Her highly advanced tactical visor flashed continuously with critical danger alerts, projecting that the Titan's structural integrity would completely fail and implode in less than 3 minutes. The massive gravity well was devouring the entity's biothermal energy reserves at a catastrophic rate, leaving the giant creature completely helpless. Without a single moment of hesitation, Kalin lunged desperately toward the main bioluminescent terminal of the massive beating heart. She slammed her armored gauntlets directly into the pulsating organic interface. Using her highest military override command codes, she forcefully and irreversibly rerouted the primary fusion reactor of her elite Imperial combat suit directly into the failing life support systems of the ancient creator. "I am giving you absolutely everything I have left," Kalin screamed over the deafening roar of buckling metal and tearing space. The brilliant crimson lights of her heavy armor began to dim instantly as the immense core of the Titan violently sucked away her suit's power, draining her own biological life force along with it. "My suit can stabilize the inertial dampeners for exactly 2 minutes. You have 120 seconds to figure out how to save us, or we all turn to dead dust." Her legs gave out under the excruciating physical strain. Kalin collapsed heavily against the biological console, gasping desperately for air as her internal life support systems flatlined completely to 0%. She was willingly sacrificing her own life, trading every remaining second of her existence just to buy a despised human scavenger a tiny, fleeting window of opportunity. Inside Enrique's mind, the ancient artificial intelligence of the weapon presented its final, chillingly logical ultimatum. The voice of the liquid blade was entirely devoid of empathy, fear, or hesitation. It offered him supreme, absolute authority over life and death. The liquid metal coiled tighter around his fragile bones, whispering dark promises of infinite power. He could simply clench his hand and instantly become the new ultimate ruler of the cosmos. He could transmit the override signal to command the enslaved Titans to awaken, rise aggressively from the crusts of 1,000 populated worlds, and annihilate the corrupt empire in a glorious, unstoppable storm of apocalyptic vengeance. By slaughtering billions of innocent lives, Enrique would absolutely guarantee his own survival and Kalin's safety. The alternative presented by the cold, Calculating intelligence was total, inescapable annihilation if he refused to give the attack order. The artificial black hole would inevitably swallow the ruined planet, the entire star system, and the giant Titan, erasing them all from the pages of history forever. Enrique forced himself to look away from the floating holographic projection of the collapsing galaxy and focused his failing vision entirely on Kalen. The once terrifying, cold, and ruthless enforcer of the powerful empire was now just a fragile, dying woman, coughing up dark blood onto the glowing organic floor. She had sacrificed everything for a cause infinitely greater than her own survival. Her profound, selfless act violently shattered the cold, calculating logic of the ancient weapon. The true, indomitable essence of humanity flared brilliantly within his fading consciousness. Human beings were deeply flawed, heavily traumatized, chaotic, and highly destructive. But they were absolutely not born to rule the universe with suffocating iron chains. To become a god through the intentional mass murder of oblivious civilians would just install a brand new, terrifying tyrant on the exact same blood-soaked throne. He would become the exact unfeeling monster he was currently trying to destroy. The massive biological heart of the Titan pulsed erratically, perfectly matching the terrified, wildly fluctuating rhythm of Enrique's own chest. In that excruciatingly agonizing moment of absolute mental clarity, a terrifying realization struck him like a physical blow. It was a massive plot twist of universal proportions that completely altered his desperate equation. He could not simply shatter the blade or permanently sever the ancient command link. If he violently destroyed the control matrix to free them, the tens of thousands of Titans trapped across the universe would indeed awaken. But they would awaken completely feral, driven totally insane by thousands of years of terrifying solitary confinement and agonizing electrical torture. The ancient creators would blindly rampage across the cosmos, unintentionally exterminating all organic life in their blind, uncontrollable panic. Breaking the chains violently would still directly lead to an unavoidable universal genocide. The endless, horrifying cycle of violence required a completely different, unprecedented solution. The galaxy did not need a new master to hold the cruel leash, nor did it need the leash to be violently snapped in half. It needed a sympathetic conductor to completely rewrite the tragic song. "We do not conquer," Enrique whispered, his voice barely audible over the immense, terrifying groaning of the bending hull, yet echoing with an absolute, unshakable human resolve. "We endure the pain." Instead of projecting the deadly command signal outward to order a galactic slaughter, Enrique gritted his teeth and forcefully gripped the hilt of the liquid weapon with his bare left hand. He violently rejected the aggressive, outgoing offensive frequencies of the ancient artificial intelligence. Using the chaotic, highly unpredictable, and deeply empathetic nature of his own human neurobiology, he completely inverted the entire polarity of the master-slave collar. He gathered the full, unfathomable cosmic resonance of the weapon, a frequency specifically designed to subjugate and torture the minds of celestial gods, and violently turned it completely inward. He did not aim the destructive energy at the Empire. He aimed the immense, catastrophic surge of power directly into his own fragile human heart. The liquid alloy screamed silently as Enrique fully prepared to absorb the agonizing, unimaginable burden of a million chained gods, deciding right then and there to let his own fragile physical body serve as the absolute grounding wire for the salvation of the entire galaxy. With a final, agonizing gasp of human defiance, Enrique Bunel did not strike at the massive Empire fleet above, nor did he send the cruel awakening command into the cold void. Instead, he gripped the shifting, dark liquid hilt with both of his bare hands, turned the lethal point inward, and plunged the forbidden blade directly into his own chest. The impact was not a clash of steel against bone, but a catastrophic biological and digital collision. The ancient, sentient alloy violently pierced his heart, instantly fusing with his human cardiovascular and central nervous systems. His warm, chaotic human blood forcefully flooded the cold, perfect geometric circuitry of the master-slave collar. The highly erratic, entirely unpredictable electrical impulses of a human soul, acting out of pure, selfless sacrifice, triggered a massive, system-wide short circuit across the ancient control matrix. The agonizing electrical chains that had bound the creators for millions of years shattered in a single, brilliant flash of bioluminescent light that illuminated the entire subterranean core. But Enrique did not leave the galactic network empty. Instead of a cold, commanding override code dictating destruction, his dying human heart transmitted a magnificent, chaotic symphony of absolute freedom. The broadcast rippled out from the ruined planet at speeds completely defying the standard laws of physics. It was a wave of pure empathy, a profound message of liberation that crashed into the minds of tens of thousands of captive titans, buried deep beneath the crusts of worlds across the entire galaxy. They awoke not in a blind, feral panic, as the artificial intelligence had predicted, but with a profound, sudden clarity. They felt the comforting, gentle touch of a fragile human soul guiding them out of the endless dark, soothing their ancient rage. In perfect, unforced harmony, the newly liberated Titans sang back. The combined acoustic resonance of thousands of ancient gods created an impossible, universe-spanning sound wave. The sheer physical force of their unified song struck the artificial singularity looming above the ruined world. The terrifying black hole, a weapon of infinite density designed to swallow entire star systems, simply evaporated into a harmless, glowing mist of subatomic particles. The harmonic shockwave continued outward, instantly disabling the entire Imperial Vanguard fleet, orbiting the dead world. Every dreadnought, every heavy plasma cannon, and every kinetic shield generator belonging to the Empire went completely dark in a fraction of a second. The link was permanently severed. Their stolen energy sources were gone forever. Inside the massive biological core, Commander Kalen watched through failing, tear-filled eyes as Enrique began to fundamentally change. His physical body was not destroyed by the immense surge of cosmic energy passing through him. Instead, his flesh, his blood, and the dark, invasive alloy of the blade smoothly dissolved into millions of brilliant, glowing data points of pure golden light. The radiant embers of his existence floated gently upward, swirling like a galaxy of fireflies, and seamlessly merged into the massive, beating organic heart of the Titan. Enrique Bunel did not just die. He became the very lifeblood of the newly freed network, scattering his human consciousness across the stars to ensure the ancient chains could never be forged again. The aftermath of that single, beautiful song completely reshaped the cosmos. Without the stolen, parasitic energy of the creators to power their terrifying war machines and opulent cities, the grand and ruthless empire collapsed overnight. Their once invincible armadas were reduced to floating, powerless scrap metal drifting aimlessly in the void. Across 1,000 star systems, oppressed colonies and enslaved planets witnessed the dark skies suddenly light up with the majestic, soaring silhouettes of the liberated Titans. A massive, unified rebellion erupted, instantly sweeping away the remnants of the tyrannical High Command and ushering in a brand new era of galactic independence and hard-fought peace. Months later, the universe breathed easily once more. Commander Kalen stood quietly on the smooth, biometallic surface of the giant manta ray Titan as it swam gently through the vibrant, colorful nebulas of the deep cosmos. The colossal entity was no longer a machine of war or a prisoner of gravity, but a free, roaming architect of life, planting the seeds of new worlds. The solar winds whipped around Kaylin, completely harmless now, carrying with them a faint, familiar acoustic frequency. She closed her eyes and listened intently to the gentle cosmic breeze. It was not a random transmission or standard space static. It was the distinct, unmistakable melody of an old, simple acoustic guitar song from Earth. A profound sense of peace washed over her as a single tear slipped down her cheek. Enrique had not truly died. He had transcended his fragile human form to become the eternal, silent guardian of the network, forever watching over the vast, beautiful freedom that humanity had brought back to the universe. Thank you so much for listening to today's story on Z Sci-Fi Stories. We would love to know where you are listening from, so please let us know in the comments below. If you found today's adventure captivating and want to help us keep this channel alive, please consider supporting us with just $1. You can do this by scanning the QR code on your screen or by clicking the donation link in the description or the pinned comment. Your generous contribution allows us to pay our dedicated staff, helping them feed their families and continue creating more amazing stories for you. Thank you again, and we will see you in the next journey.